And at the end of the 11th was when she went to the prison again. And it was the morning of one of our last school days. And suddenly police came into our apartment. And I remember just like breaking down. I went to our school psychologist, talked to her for a little bit. And then when 12th grade rolled around, I just could not get myself to do anything anymore. I grew up in an interesting way. I come from a weird family. I don't know how else to put it. My parents had basically separated by the time I was born, but they were still living under the same roof. But so was my new stepmom. So it was just very hectic, a lot of fighting and stuff going on. And I also had two older brothers living with me back then. And I think I was maybe around 3, 4 when I moved out with my dad, and both of my brothers stayed with my mom. And there was like, I've always lived in Tallinn, Estonia, but there was a lot of moving around. My dad would rent apartments in all different places, so there wasn't anything really stable until around when I was 7. When I went to school, then we moved to our apartment where we stayed for 12 years. Yeah, then I also had 2 younger stepbrothers who were born. And let me think, what else should I be sharing about it? As a little kid, I was like really happy, and I loved dancing and singing and I was just very outgoing. And then in my teen years, it suddenly changed. I was like a completely different person, but I also had like a lot of responsibilities. My dad and my stepmom had their share of issues, and they had problems with the police and stuff like that. So I lived alone for a little while when I was 9 years old, because they were on the run from the police. So they just left me to live at the apartment. They left me some cash in the pocket of my dad's jacket, and I'm like, yeah, you'll figure it out. So, yeah, I was a very independent child, I guess. But my dad took it a bit too far. So yeah, I just stayed by myself for a little while, just used the cash to go buy some food. And I think I continued going to the school just normally, and they sent me like messages through this journalists that they were friends with. They just came up to me at school being like, hey, your family's currently in Latvia. If you have any problems, you could let us know, but yeah, you'll be fine. But then at some point my mom found out about it, so she took me to her place, but I didn't really have a relationship with her. As I mentioned, I went with my dad, and when I was living with my dad, we did not really see each other or talk to each other. So it somewhat felt like staying at a stranger's place. And my dad was also really unhappy about it. So he sent my stepmom to come get me, and we just hopped on like random trucks and things to take me to Latvia with them as well. So I was technically on the run with them eventually. And yeah.
Where were your step siblings?
I only had one back then, only one of my younger stepbrothers, and he went with them. He was just a baby. So, yeah, and then at some point they decided to come back to Estonia and turn themselves into the police. So I did actually end up staying at my mom's for a little while. And what year am I in now? Yeah, I was around 9 back then. And once my dad got out of jail, I went back to live with him. And then somewhere around that time, my other younger brother was also born. And then my stepmom ended up going to jail for a longer time. So I basically became the mom for my 2 younger brothers because my dad was always away and I basically had to raise them. And yeah, during that time was when I just fell into like a really dark place, but nobody knew I was like a straight A student, and nobody could tell that anything was wrong or going on. But yeah, just internally it was a whole battle. And yeah, I stayed in that really depressed and like this victim mindset for a long, long time. So that's in short kind of what my growing up was like.
Okay, so backing up to when you were born, did your older siblings, were they from your mum and dad?
Yeah.
So your parents had been together for some time.
Mhm. Yeah, they also met in some kind of a weird way. Their relationship was just very hectic. A lot of fighting.
How did they meet?
I found out about it like 2 years ago. My mom told me that my dad was in like this gang type thing when he was younger. They would just kind of threaten people to make them do whatever needed to be done. And I think my mom had been taking one of my dad's girlfriends out to parties or something like that. And that friend was really unhappy about it. So he basically sent my dad to go and like talk to her, be like, hey, stop that. But instead of it being a fight, they actually kind of decided that they like each other. So they went out. I don't know. It was just a really, really strange story. My dad was supposed to go up to my mom to kind of threaten her, but instead they kind of fell in love.
Interesting. Okay. And both your parents are Estonian
Yeah.
and they grew up in Tallinn.
I don't know much about my dad's past, really. His is an interesting story. I really don't know. And I don't think his roots go back to Estonia either. He doesn't look Estonian. My mom does. She's like the typical, uh, has blonde hair and green eyes, but my dad's like darker, like nearly black hair and dark brown eyes. And so I think his roots go back to somewhere else, but I have no idea.
Huh. And do you know your grandparents or other family on his side?
Not that well. I have had somewhat of a relationship with his mom, but she's never really told me about her childhood or anything like that.
And they're in Estonia as well.
Yeah,
Oh my God, you'll have to do a DNA test.
I think so.
Like to find out where your ancestors are from. Okay. So your parents were together and then at some point, so when you were 3, then your dad took you to go and live with him.
Yeah,
How how did that happen that you went and not your brothers? Do you know? I guess you're kind of, it's like too young to remember probably.
yeah. The thing is, I would only know what my parents told me, so I cannot say that it's definitely factual. But my mom has basically said that my dad did it to hurt her because, yeah, I was the last child. They were basically already not together, and I was the only girl. And so my dad was just like, I'm gonna take her. And on my part, there was a lot of like brainwashing going on. I wasn't really allowed to have my own opinions of things. There was just a lot of fear in my household, so I had to say the right things and agree with what my dad told me.
And did you have much contact with your brothers after you'd left?
They they came to visit initially, but later on, my dad cut my oldest brother out of his life completely, and then also my other older brother didn't come around as much. So yeah, we didn't have like a very consistent relationship.
And how did you get on with your stepmother growing up?
Initially, really well. Initially, she was very loving, and especially when I had to start taking care of my younger brothers, that's when I just like this frustration in me grew a lot because I was just yeah very very angry at the situation, but I wasn't really allowed to show the anger. And yeah, when she was in jail, especially, I basically hated her. But yeah, my dad made me go to the visits or things at the prison as well with my younger brothers, and I just hated it so much. um, and yeah, nowadays we don't really have much of a relationship. She's a very hurt person, so it's difficult.
Do you know much about her story?
I've heard some things, but I'm again not sure what is true and what is kind of just told to make me believe certain things. She grew up on one of the islands in Estonia. It's a really beautiful island, and both of her parents are doctors. They have like their own private hospital. Um, it, and it seems like a very beautiful family, but what she's told me, supposedly it wasn't that nice. But I'm I'm not sure whether that's true or not.
Mm-hmm. Have you met much of her family?
Yeah, when I was younger, maybe like 8 or so. And when I was like really young, then I remember we went to that island sometimes and we would stay at their house and it was really nice. But yeah, at some point it suddenly changed.
And so before this happened when you were 9 and you were left on your own, do you remember, was it like a kind of happy childhood, or like do you have good memories? Or I guess there was a thing with your dad, like you having to have the same opinions and everything. Like, were you aware of that from really young?
I think the thing is when you brainwash a young child, I think they just lack the awareness to understand what's going on. Uh, I would say I was happy until some point when I was not sure what year I would say it was until, but yeah, when I was younger, when I did all of my dancing and things, I remember feeling really happy. But yeah, I think once the fighting and stuff started to be really frequent at home, that's when I kind of lost that joy. And yeah, I
And
was constantly afraid, but I wasn't really aware of the fact that I was afraid.
mm-hmm. And did you enjoy school and like had good friends at this point when you were like 6 or 7 or?
I went to preschool for 3 years. I loved it there. And then I went to the actual school. uh, and yeah, I initially it was quite fun, and then at some point there was also just a lot of fear there. As I mentioned, I was a straight A student, and it wasn't difficult for me to get those grades, but at the same time there was always like this tension at the back of my mind because my dad would shout at me if I brought home like 95% on a test. So I was just like, I need to perform at my absolute best at all times. And yeah, I think sometime at some point in my teen years, I just closed off a lot. And then I didn't find making friends or anything as easy anymore because I give to myself.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, then at the point that you were 9 and they went on the run,
Hmm.
is that, because I guess I'm asking, did you feel like it was like a normal childhood, or did you know like until that point, or did you know there was something like that going on?
No, weirdly enough, it seemed normal. I was just like, yeah, that's just another day. As I mentioned, I was really independent. I was often home alone, but I hadn't been home alone for like prolonged periods of time. So, but once that happened, I was just like, oh, just another day in our family.
Huh. And you were like, okay, it's fine. You didn't feel
Yeah,
abandoned or anything. You were like, yeah, they left me money. I can take care of myself.
probably deep down, I definitely felt abandonment. I'm sure there is an abandonment wound there, But yeah, I wasn't really aware of that. I was fine. And I personally did not try to contact my mom. She found out some other way that I think she probably saw it on the news or something that uh, my dad and stepmom were on the run. And then she started wondering, where am I?
Wow. Okay, so it was like a high profile thing.
Well, Estonia is super tiny. When somebody is on the run, everybody will know about it.
Okay, so did you tell friends or anyone at school, or it was just like you didn't think
One
you
of my
needed to tell
closest
anyone?
friends, he did know. We would hang out, and because I had all of this cash, suddenly it was like, hey, I'm gonna buy you lunch too. So we would sit around on a playground, and he was the only one who knew about it.
Huh. How long was it until you went and stayed with your mum?
I don't know. It's difficult to kind of think back to that. Yeah, I maybe like a couple of weeks, probably. I'm not sure.
So did you know how to cook and wash your clothes and things like that?
I think I had enough clothes that I could just like pick new things when things got dirty. I don't think I knew how to wash my clothes back then, but cooking, yeah, I was fine with that.
So you would just go to the supermarket by yourself, buy what you
Yeah,
needed, and
yeah.
cook it. And no one in the supermarket thought it was weird that you were like on your own.
We were joking about it with that friends who knew about it. It was like uh, the I feel like the shop assistants must have known because I would back then we didn't have euros back then, we had the Estonian krones, but I had like the biggest number of it. It was like the 500s. I would pull those out in my back pocket and pay in those. And I feel like that must have looked really strange, like this tiny little girl coming into the shop and pulling out like the biggest notes from her back pocket. But nobody said anything.
Wow. And you felt safe or okay, I guess, like staying in a house on your own.
Yeah,
Huh. Did you have friendly neighbors and stuff like that?
I lived in an apartment building, but I don't think we got along with any of our neighbors. Estonians don't usually talk to each other. So
Huh. Okay. Okay, so then you went and stayed with your mum, who was basically like a stranger to you at that point.
hmm But I didn't stay with her for long. It was a very short time before my stepmom came to get me and take me with them to Latvia.
Wow.
And my
And
dad said that he trusted me being alone more than he would have trusted me being with my mom, which is a very strange thing to say to somebody who's 9. But
do you know why he would say something like that?
because they just hate each other a lot, um, and I think he was kind of afraid of me hearing the opinions of anybody else other than him to kind of get another opinion on our like family stuff and what's been really going on.
Okay. So it's not like that, it was like that your mum's abusive or horrible or anything necessarily.
Not necessarily.
And then how was that for you going with them to Latvia?
Again, because my family life had always been so strange that it again didn't seem anything that out of the ordinary. Uh, yeah, the fact that we got there on like random trucks, that was kind of weird. I was like, why are we going there in the middle of the night and sitting in some random guy's car? Uh, but yeah, once I got to Latvia, because my dad was there, it seemed like a vacation kind of, because we were in a different country and staying in like a little cottage type place, and and not looking at the Estonian news where they were telling that we were all on the run.
So were you hitchhiking in random
Yeah,
trucks, like asking people
yeah.
for a lift? Got it. And do you know what they were on the run for?
Just some fraudulent activity. Yeah, all of their problems with the law have had to do with just getting money in not the nicest ways, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And so were you concerned about missing school or anything?
Not not really. I think it was like late spring or something, so the school year was kind of ending anyways. And since it was just the second grade, it wasn't anything that difficult. So yeah,
And why did they decide to turn themselves in?
they didn't really mention it, but I think they just realized that they just can't be on the run forever, especially since they had two kids as well. I think they talked to their lawyer and decided that that's probably the best thing to do.
And what was that like for you when your dad went to prison?
That was awful. I think I once mentioned in therapy that it's probably one of the most painful memories I have in my life because it was like a very codependent relationship I had with my dad. But yeah, I was super close to him and he made me feel and believe that he was the only one who would kind of protect me and the only one I really had. And the day when he turned himself in, we walked, I think it's like a 10-kilometer walk. So I walked with him all the way to the city because he didn't want to take the bus or use the car or anything. So he walked to the police station. And yeah, I just remember that that was so painful. And yeah, I went
And
straight to my mom's place from there.
did you understand what was going on or why he had to be in prison?
Not completely, I don't think so.
Was he like, I've done something wrong, or was he like, something unfair has happened to me, or neither of those?
I think he said that it was just unfair and that he hadn't done anything wrong, that they're just trying to make him be out to be this bad guy that he's not.
And did you believe that?
Yeah, I think I believed all of these things up until like a few years back.
So how long was that he was in prison?
He wasn't there for that long. Again, I'm kind of kind of blanking on the time frames because I think we just view at times as really differently when we're children. Yeah, I think he was probably there for some months. I don't think he was gone for that long.
Mm-hmm. And when you were like 10 or 11 or something?
Yeah, I must have been 9 and then he went away. I was probably 10 when he was back.
And then when was it that your stepmother went to prison?
Like a year or two after that.
So then it was you, your dad, and their two kids.
Mhm.
And you had to take on the role of looking after them, basically.
Yeah, my dad was basically never home then. It was just, I don't know where, but he was just gone.
Like out of the country, or just like would he come home in the evenings?
He would come home in the evenings, but like late at night, like around 11, sometimes in the middle of the night.
And what's the age gap with your step siblings or
My
half
youngest
siblings?
one is 10 years younger than I am, and the other one, he's 5 years younger than I am. So I think I was
Okay,
12, and then the youngest one was 2, and the other one was 7. Because I remember he went to first grade when I had to take care of them, because I was also responsible for making sure he had all of his homework and stuff done.
oh my God. Okay, so you're a 12-year-old looking after a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Was there, was there any like support from the state or the prison system or like social workers or something? Or I guess were they like, they would have assumed that your dad was looking after the child?
They assumed that my dad was doing it up.
And did you talk to him about it, or it was just like an expectation?
It was just an expectation. And in my home, you don't talk back.
Wow. So how many years was that till your stepmom came out?
4 years. She was gone for 4 years.
And were you able to talk to any of your friends or anyone at school? Teachers or anything?
The teachers definitely not. My friends were aware of it because they would ask me to hang out, and I was like, I need to wait for my dad to come home. I can't otherwise. And then at some point they did get a babysitter that was allowed to be with the older one when he was outside, but I still had to take care of the younger one. So there was a period of time when I would go hang out with my friends and have like this tiny little kid with me. So it was interesting.
Wow. So you must have such a close relationship with them.
It's a different kind of relationship. It's not like your normal brother sister relationship, because yeah, I had to actually like take care of them and make sure they were doing all of their stuff.
And so did school suffer, I guess? Like wouldn't have the teachers paid attention if you were always doing really well at school and then suddenly you're,
No, I was still
I'm
doing
guessing
really
like
well
you,
at school. I was still getting my straight A's. The first time I started suffering in school was the last year of high school.
okay. So you just stayed like mentally strong through those 4 years and did everything you
Yeah,
had to do.
yeah,
And then when your stepmom returned, that's when you started struggling.
yeah. I kind of grew up enough to start understanding things, and yeah, I was at that point. I was constantly sad. I was really depressed, but I could not understand what was wrong with me, because like I grew up in that uh, environment. Like I mentioned, even being on the run from the police or things like that, they seemed normal. So I didn't really understand that anything was wrong. But at the same time, something in me was wrong. But I was like, what's wrong with me? You're being too sensitive. Like, get it together.
So that was your last year of school.
There were a few, when my stepmom came back, there were still some more years of school. She actually went to prison again, and I think that we have 12 grades in Estonia, so the 12th is the last one. And at the end of the 11th was when she went to the prison again, and it was the morning of one of our last school days of the 11th grade, and suddenly police came into our apartment. And I remember just like breaking down. I went to our school psychologist, talked to her for a little bit, and then when 12th grade rolled around, I just could not get myself to do anything anymore. So I just basically did not go to school much.
And was anyone supporting you?
Um, Again, I was kind of pretty good at hiding the fact that anything was wrong with me. In 12th grade, I was sometimes staying at my mom's, sometimes staying at my dad's, sometimes staying at my friend's. But through it all, my dad always thought that I was at my mom's. My mom always thought that I was at home. So when I was away somewhere else, they didn't really know about it. But then at some point at school, some teachers started worrying because I had been like a really, really good student. And they were just like, what's going on? Why haven't we seen you around? But they also didn't really do much about it. There were a lot of teachers kind of helped me just get through that last year. They would not force me to do all of the work or anything. They were just like, we understand that something must be going on, so you just take care of yourself. But yeah, nobody really knew what was going on.
And what were you doing during that time when you weren't at school?
Oh, I was just escaping from whatever was going on inside of me. Just a period when I started like drinking and just using any sort of substance to make me kind of escape.
So did you find a group of people to do that with?
Sorry, you got off a bit. I didn't hear your entire question.
Did you find a group of people to get into drinking and drugs with?
Yeah. My one of my closest friends back then, and I also dated somebody who was not in the best place in his life either.
And you weren't, I guess you weren't, like, do you remember what your mental state was at that point? Like your attitude to life or to your future?
It was really bad. I did not care whether I lived or died, basically. So yeah, I would just not care about the amounts of things either. Just like whatever happens, happens. I just wanted to get away so bad.
Wow, yeah, that's super tough. So how did you, like, then what happened?
So I went into this phase of, I don't think I saw like a completely sober day for maybe like 2 years of my life. And then suddenly the meditation retreat happened. It seemed so random considering like what had been going on in my life and the place where I was at. To suddenly feel like this invitation to go to meditation retreat sounds like a good idea, but something within me was like, yeah, you need to start changing this. So yeah, I went there, and it was kind of tough at the beginning, but like any meditation retreat is gonna be pretty tough. But during the meditations, I kind of just also remembered the times when I had been happier, and I remembered the type of people I would hang out with and what I would actually be doing during my days. And once I came back from that retreat, it felt difficult to go back to my normal habits. It was the first time I said no to the guy I was dating back then. He invited me over, and just the first time I was like, you know what? I don't actually want to come over. Uh, I was also like a hardcore people pleaser, and especially when it came to my relationship with anybody who's a guy, it came from my dad probably because I was so afraid of him. I was also really afraid in other relationships to say no. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, I don't really feel like it. But it didn't shift completely back then. There were still phases when I would go back into the old habits and everything. And then at some point, I also had like a few really traumatic psychedelic trips. And then I thought that I should do some microdosing. And yeah, I think when I started microdosing was when I just completely shifted out of it. Like, I cannot do these things. And then I also started going to the gym as well. So it was just like the spiritual and the physical and all of that coming together and realizing how I've been treating myself. And like, I realized that I'm not able to work out or like move my body if I do things like this to my body. So yeah, there were just like a few different puzzle pieces that all came together.
So going back to school, did you end up finishing school?
Yeah, I finished school. There were some teachers who never even saw me. We had some subjects that were only in 12th grade, and those teachers never met me. But yeah, they just were like, "Yeah, we're sure you're going through something tough. You just take it easy." So it's for some lessons, I just got grades that I didn't earn, but for others, I did show up and do like some big tests to kind of let them know that I did understand the subject.
Okay. And then, and you were still living at home?
Yeah, it technically was, but I wasn't home much.
You would be like at your boyfriend's or
Yeah,
somewhere
most of
else?
the time. But both of my parents thought that I was staying at the other parents' place.
Can you paint a picture of like what that cycle would look like? Like, I'm imagining it started as like drinking and maybe partying, and then it gets into like you're trying different drugs, and then at some point it's like you're just at home doing whatever substances, or like to get to the point, and then it's like everyday cycle, like you wake up feeling terrible and then you need to take something
Yeah,
again.
it started out with
Is
just
that what it was like?
drinking.
Or
It was like a fun thing going out with your friends and drinking a lot of alcohol. And it's also sadly like a cultural thing in Estonia. It's really normal to go out and drink like really hard liquor, a lot of it. But yeah, then when I started drinking, I hadn't really drank much when I was younger. I was like a really good kid. And I turned 18, which was the legal age here. So I started drinking and I was like, wow, when I'm drunk, I kind of don't have all of these problems and I don't feel down as much. But then the next day I would feel so much worse. And so yeah, it started out with alcohol, and then I met this friend, and she had been taking drugs for a while. So it kind of just started to become more normal. So we went out to a club, and yeah, just she was like, "Yeah, hey, we should try something else." And then through that, I met the guy that I dated for a while, and he also, not sure if I should say that or not. Yeah, he just had access to a lot of drugs. Um, and it's difficult to even call what I had with him a relationship because we didn't really like know each other. We didn't really do anything other than just escape from this world, really. And yeah, just being with him made it too easy to kind of have access to stuff. And I feel like I didn't always even have the ability to choose whether I wanted to or not. He would be kind of pushy about some things as well. And yeah, once you kind of get into that habit,
were you
it's really difficult to not do something because you feel so much worse. So like when your baseline is already bad and then you have taken something, then it feels so awful. You just want something to make you feel even an ounce better.
were you
No,
injecting things? Just what what kind of, was it like coke
yeah,
or
just
like
like
speed
yeah,
or stuff like
like
that, or
party drugs.
uh-huh, so it was always in the environment of like being social and being and partying
No,
rather
I was
than,
often just at his place. No, no parties there really.
and always with alcohol
Often with
first.
oftentimes, yeah. So
And then it got to the point where when it was like every day.
pretty much, yeah. Did something every day, at least like a beer or something to kind of make you feel a little bit happier.
Uh-huh. And how did you hear about the meditation retreats?
One of my friends had gone there, and he was like, I, I, I think I was with him the first time I ever meditated when I was like 14 or something. We met up at a park and just put on like some sort of a meditation. And he was like, "Hey, I remember you used to meditate at some point. You should try this." So he just suggested it, and yeah, something in me felt like, yeah, that's what I should do.
And how long was it for?
It was a 10-day retreat.
And was that hard to have the break from alcohol?
Not not really, actually. I guess I didn't really have like a physical dependence on it. It was very much emotional. So being in that environment, I didn't feel as bad. It was, yeah, when you're like heart centered and focused on your breath, it's really difficult to be worrying about stuff.
Okay, and this was four
Yeah,
years ago. And what has happened since? Like, obviously a
yeah, a
lot,
lot has changed.
but
um, yeah, I've realized that meditation is just, it's so powerful, and I had always been looking outside of myself to find this happiness or peace. But I started realizing that it's all within me, and yeah, I started meditating consistently, but I still had like all sorts of shadows and things that I met in different situations. And I think the most powerful experience I had was when I went to one of our tiny islands. And I think it was 2 years ago now. I was already very deep in like my own spiritual journey, but for some reason, I just felt like I really, really needed to go there. So I went there. I booked my accommodation for 2 nights initially, and whilst I was there, I was like, yeah, let's stay for another 3. And it's hard to put into words what shifted. And with like meditation and things like that, it's some things just seem so simple, but the shift that it actually creates within you is so, so big. And yeah, I went there, and back then I didn't know how to ride a bicycle, and the only way I would be able to get around that little island was if I learned how to do that. So I hopped onto a bicycle, and it was so crazy. I felt like getting like downloads of like all of the things that were kind of broken within me, kind of putting them back together. And it just created so much like self-love and just understanding, and also love for others. That was the first time I understood that my relationship with my dad had been very unhealthy, and how much it had hurt me. And instead of staying in this cycle now, like, hey, this is really painful, kind of shifting out of it and understanding where he came from and how it has affected me until this point, and that I actually have the power to change it. I don't need to look outside of it, outside of myself for it anymore. Yeah.
how long ago was this?
2 years ago.
What? Okay, this is like amazing that I feel like you're like an angel, that you are just like so compassionate, and I don't know, that you're able to just like feel so much love when it's like you experienced all of this, and to have compassion for your dad, like, and see that, you know, he's a human and he's struggling, and, or, you know, whatever, where he came from and everything like that. It's like, I mean, that can be like 20 years of rage, or like a lifetime of like,
Yeah,
anyway.
I feel like that during that time on that
Go on.
island, yeah, one of the big things I just realized was that love is the only thing that is able to heal it all. Like, not through hating or trying to get back at anybody, or also not just like staying in this hurtful place and yeah, being like, I've been hurt too much to move ahead with my life. That this won't really benefit anybody. So just, and I feel like when I'm in nature, it's really difficult to feel anything other than love.
And so what were you doing like after school? Did you get a job?
I did some substituting. I learned makeup artistry when I was like 14, 15, and I was invited to do makeup for some sort of a teacher's photo shoot. And some of the teachers were my own teachers from back in the day. And because I had been pretty good at school, they were like, hey, we always need substitute teachers. Why don't you come and teach? So yeah, I started doing some substitute teaching, and I also started teaching Estonian to a few Americans who live here. Yeah, different teaching jobs.
And at what point did you get into fitness?
I started working out, let me think. I think that was also 4 years ago. Yeah, as I mentioned, there were like a few different puzzle pieces there. And I I had been dancing basically all throughout my life. And then I joined a gym maybe in 2016 or something, did mostly group trainings. And then 4 years ago, I went up to my oldest brother being like, hey, I feel like I wanna try this weightlifting thing. So he gave me my first ever training plan, and I immediately fell in love. I love the fact that you are competing with yourself instead of anybody else. You're trying to get better or stronger or do more reps every time. So yeah, it was just really empowering. And in a way, I feel like this weight training kind of helped me heal my own like inner masculine and kind of, yeah, just like just taking care of my feminine body through like the masculine energy and all of that. So yeah, I really, really fell in love with it, and I started to prioritize my own health and just started to be really in touch with my body. I would understand like, oh, if I don't eat enough or I don't eat balanced enough, then I don't have the energy to do these workouts. Or if I was to drink something, my workouts would be completely ruined. So yeah, I started on that journey, but there were still like some unhealthy patterns there. When I was younger, I struggled with an eating disorder as well because there was no balance in my home life. So I wanted something to have control over. So my diet ended up being the thing. So initially, when I went to the gym as well, there was just like really trying to change everything with my mind, like fit into this tiny frame or something. But whilst also doing like my meditation and spiritual practices on the side, I realized that that's not really how it should be working out. And yeah, that's when I decided to get certified as a personal trainer, and also had a lot of like this spiritual and meditation practices into what I've helped others do as well, because it can be really, really unhealthy when you just try to control everything with your mind.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm like on that
Mm.
path at the moment. I'm doing the intuitive
Yeah,
eating thing, which means undoing all these like years of conditioning or just everywhere, like shaming
yeah,
certain foods or, yes, thought cycles. So interesting of like feeling dysregulated. So then using food to like calm down, but then feeling like
yeah,
guilt and shame and whatever. Oh my God, there's so much. But this is so exciting. I feel like the world is like hopefully
yeah,
moving in that direction. Or even as everything comes together from psychology, I was like, yeah, but we can't just always be intellectualizing. It's like we need to get into the body. Like everything's kind of getting more into
Yeah.
the body, and then it all is related.
Yeah, I love that it's moving in this direction.
Okay, cool. So you feel, so what does life look for you like right now?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting phase where, yeah, some things have kind of crumbled apart, but I know that it's for the best, really. But it's, yeah, in this kind of phase where I'm kind of letting go of a lot of things. So yeah, right now I am working towards going more into the fitness coaching thing. I have been doing some teaching on the side, but yeah, I really feel passion towards helping women not go into like these terrible diet cycles or disconnect from their bodies. So yeah, most days I'm working on that, writing out content. I'm trying to get into that phase where I do a bit more content where I would be talking myself, but it's a few fears that I need to overcome still. But yeah, most days I spend on all of this. Yeah, but also staying active. I need to spend time in nature every single day. And do my meditation practices and stay active.
And you feel good about yourself, and like you have a lot of compassion for yourself, and you're not like you have a much healthier relationship
For
with
sure.
yourself.
Yeah, it's really funny to look back at myself just like some years back. It seems like a completely different person.
I'm just so impressed by how like quickly you've done this. Like I feel like most people is like just suffering, or not like whirlwind through their 20s, and then it's like all falls apart later on, and then in their 30s they're like putting it back together. Or some people like way later, like in their 40s or 50s, but you're just like
Speed running.
doing all the healing. What has been your main tools, I guess, or your main, like, on the spiritual path?
Yeah, as I mentioned, yeah,
Obviously it started with
started
that
with
Buddhist
meditation.
retreat.
Yeah, just connecting to your body. Yeah, tuning into your breath. Such a simple thing, but I feel like this deserves like the #1 spot in my healing journey. But then I've also done like some more woo-woo spiritual practices, I guess. uh, I love some somatic work because with like trauma and stuff, we carry it around in our bodies quite a bit. So yeah, I would do like my meditations, but I would still feel like this kind of stuckness or frozenness in my body, or I would be like kind of, yeah, just really tense all the time, or like really easily startled. So I kind of found my way towards like some more somatic practices. I've done like uh, some like Kundalini meditations and like shaking the body out. And I've also done a Himalayan Kriya yoga, which is like a really intense practice that kind of combines everything. There's the breath work, but there's also like movement and sound and shaking and, yeah, just a bit of everything, like letting go of the old in your body. But yeah, I tend to be really intuitive with like what my body is asking for. But most of the time it's just returning to the breath and tuning into the heart. But yeah, then every once in a while I'm like, my body wants something more intense to kind of release. And also, I've also done some breath work as well.
And is there a good community in Estonia? Like, have you been kind of following your intuition to find people and places to do this, or has it been more online, or like have there been podcasts or books, or
It has been more
like how have
online.
you even found and learned about
It
these
has
things?
been mostly online, but there is this one girl in Estonia. She's doing amazing things. And yeah, she's kind of introducing a lot of these practices to people around here as well. So I I've been to some of her like in-person events as well, but yeah, mostly online. And for
Like through YouTube or just Googling stuff?
I've I've Googled some stuff. I've also the meditation app I mentioned earlier that I like to use, Insight Timer, because there are so many like independent teachers on there. There's the possibility to discover like all sorts of different modalities as well.
You must have such good intuition, I guess, to lead you to the right places. And also, I guess, commitment to doing the healing and finding what works and not avoiding it.
Yeah, I guess I just at some point got so fed up with my escaping behaviors and just feeling bad that I was like, we just cannot continue like this. And with my intuition,
And so, did your. Sorry,
and
go on.
I want to say that with my intuition, I've had points where I've just completely ignored my intuition, and I've been burned really bad because of it. So that's why I'm now really trying to listen to what she says.
And did your relationships really shift as well since you've done this
Yeah,
work?
the people I hang out with, like before those 4 years ago, I don't talk to any of them really. And but also just the relationships that I do have, they're so much deeper. They're Yeah, I feel like my closest relationships, we kind of like hold each other accountable. We like back in the day, maybe we would just like hang out and complain about stuff, but now that just does not happen when when we're complaining about something. It's like, hey, okay, what's going on here? Like, what's really beneath it all? So yeah, just completely different. I feel like we're speaking from the heart rather than all of the worries and mess in the head.
And what about with family?
I currently don't talk to my dad, um, because yeah, he's been kind of moving around and just a lot has been going on, and yeah, haven't talked to him in a few months. Last spoke to him in spring. And with my mom, yeah, I think our relationship is the best it's ever been, really. And again, it's deeper because I feel like I'm more authentic, and when you show up authentically, people tend to mirror that.
And your siblings?
It's it's pretty good. We we don't hang out that much, but when we do, it's always just it's beautiful. Really open heart to heart conversations and truly being present for each other.
Amazing. Okay, I'm so excited for like how your career evolve or career life, how all of this
Thank you.
evolves. Because I feel like the pace of growth is crazy. So it's just
I
exciting for what you're going to end up doing,
appreciate that.
or like what you're already doing. Where can where can people find you on that note or learn more about, especially if there's someone who's struggling with diet and their body and all
Yeah,
of that?
I'm active on a few social media platforms. My Instagram probably the most. I also have a Facebook account where I share a bit about my personal life. Um, Currently not using Twitter. I do have a TikTok account as well, but I basically just repost what I post on Instagram onto there. So yeah, probably Instagram would be the best.
And do you coach people in person or
I do
online?
it online mostly. I I have a few in-person clients, so if anybody is in Estonia, I'm open to it. But yeah, mostly shifting to online work now.
Cool. Okay. Wait, so what's your Instagram? I'll put it in the description as well.
It's Marelle.Merita, so both of my first names with a little period in between.
Amazing. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add? Or can I ask you the last 3 questions?
I think you can probably go for the questions.
Okay. How do you stay grounded?
By meditating and spending time in nature. Nature is probably the biggest one. Just sitting down on the actual ground is so powerful.
Amazing. Is there like a forest or something near where you live?
That's one of the beautiful things about Estonia. There is nature basically everywhere. Like 5 minutes from here, you're basically surrounded by nature already, though I pretty much live in the city.
Amazing. Oh yeah, Tallinn is so beautiful, as we already discussed. I highly recommend everyone go there.
It's beautiful.
In my opinion. It's like, it looks like a fairy tale city. It's like so pretty, all the different color buildings. Okay. Is there a book that's had a big impact on your life?
There have been quite a few books that have a big impact on my life. I feel like I must say The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, because I found it at a time where I was just not knowing like what was wrong or what was going on. So that book really goes into how trauma affects our bodies and how we're often so unaware of it. And just like how the medical system often also looks at the body and mind as 2 separate things, but they're so deeply interconnected. So I feel like that was one of the really life-altering books for me.
And what are the 3 words that describe the best version of Marelle?
Loving, authentic, and courageous.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
You have such a powerful story. Honestly, I'm like really in awe of you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this conversation. Feel free to share it with someone if you think they'd get something out of it. And you can also subscribe or follow the podcast so then you find out about new episodes. And purely for my own ego, no, just kidding. I think it actually helps the algorithm and helps more people find the podcast. If you want to rate or review, go for it. And see you next time.